Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. Today, we tackle some of the garden questions that have come in from around the country lately, such as, how do you overwinter a pepper plant indoors? What are these new bugs on my tomato plants? And a question from a couple of months ago when we were all stifling in record-breaking heat. Are there any roses that can tolerate and grow in high temperatures? We get answers from two of my favorite Debbies, Master Rosarian Debbie Arrington and America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower. And we get pepper overwintering advice from a professional pepper grower, Dave DeWitt. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Let's go. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. As you know, there are a lot of ways to get your questions in. You can leave an audio question without making a phone call via SpeakPipe. Just go to speakpipe.com/gardenbasics. Yeah, of course, you can always call or text us the question and maybe even text us in a picture. Call 916-292-8964, 916-292-8964. You can leave a question at our website, gardenbasics.net. And you can also email in your garden questions as well to fred@farmerfred.com with your questions and your pictures. And however you come in, please tell us where you are, because all gardening is local. And today's question comes from Mystic Tudor. That's okay. You can call yourself whatever you want. Just tell us where you live. Mystic Tudor says, I live in the Mojave Desert of Southern California. Thank you for that. It's hot and dry here. I have a lot of sweet peppers in 3-gallon Smart Pots. Today will be our first hard freeze, so I picked out my 6 favorite plants and brought them indoors. Problem is, I do this every year, and every year almost all of them die before the next spring. I don't trim them down to a bare stem like some folks suggest. Should I? I'm going to place them somewhere where they can get better sunlight this year in case that's the issue. My house stays between 50 and 70 all winter. I do slow my watering from daily to twice a week like my other houseplants, but the soil stays moist without the 100-degree heat. Not sure what else to do. Thanks for your help. All right, well, thanks for that question, Mystic. We're going to hear from a professional pepper grower, Dave DeWitt, in a few minutes on this topic. And Mystic, you hit on one very noticeable trend online when it comes to answering the overwintering pepper questions. The answers are really all over the place. So before we get to Dave, let me add my thoughts on that ball of pepper puzzlement. First of all, I think you were leaning to answering your own questions correctly. The goal in this situation is to get the pepper to survive through the winter, not thrive, just live. You don't want to be trying to encourage winter fruiting on a plant that's more at home in a much warmer climate. Also, water sparingly, maybe once every other week, and allow that water to drain out. And don't fertilize at all. It's too much stress on the plant. Do give the plant some light from a south or west-facing window if possible. Temperatures should not drop below 50 to 55 degrees. It looks like you're okay in that regard. But if it is a dark room, do what you're thinking and set up some grow lights or move it to where there's a window. For grow lights, there's a lot of inexpensive options available. All right, let's get to the hard stuff, though, on this. To prune or not prune that pepper plant before overwintering. Some say yes, prune it back to the main stem and a few laterals, maybe leave the plant about a foot or two high, if that, leaving about 5 to 10 buds. The buds are located wherever you remove the leaves. Some growers will bring the plant in and let the leaves fall off naturally. I tend to think, though, that you can eliminate many hitchhiking pests by removing the leaves outdoors, then bring in the plant. Is that pepper plant in a container, or is it in the ground before you bring it in? Well, based on what we've learned about the interaction of good soil microbes and existing soil, it might be better to bring in the containerized pepper plant with its current soil if it is free of pests and diseases and the plant was growing vigorously. Still, you'd want to remove the leaves, and before bringing it in, if you're bringing it in soil from outdoors, either in a pot or in the ground, rinse the plant thoroughly with lots of water, both sprayed on the plant itself as well as saturating and draining the soil. That'll dislodge any ants or other problematic insects before you bring it in. Now, do you need to repot in new soil before bringing it indoors? There's a lot of answers online that say, yes, give it new soil or sterilize the soil. Oh, man, that's a tough question. I would say if the pepper plant is in a pot and it's healthy, there's no sign of any soil-borne pests or diseases, bring it in the way it is, after, of course, watering that soil thoroughly and draining it of that ant farm you might find. And I'm going to differ with those who say if you're digging a plant out of the ground to clean off the roots of the plant and pot it up in new soil. Again, you're going to have to be wary of any soil-borne problems. But in either case, I would not wash off the soil that's clinging to the roots if you decide to bring in that plant and give it new soil. There's a lot of good microbes in that soil near the roots. Generally, though, if there's a problem lurking, you're going to see it on the underside of the leaves or in the top inch of soil. So scrape off that top inch of existing soil, remove the leaves outdoors, and then bring it in, transplanted to a pot. Now, you might want to conduct your own science experiment on this. Bring in several pepper plants like you normally do in the wintertime, but use different combinations of pruning and potting for each plant and see who lives, not thrives, just lives through the winter. That's your goal. Now, there are a few misunderstandings surrounding the production in year 2 of overwintering pepper plants. Are they more productive in year 2? Will they bear fruit earlier? Is it worth the hassle? For the answers to those questions, we turn to professional pepper grower Dave DeWitt. Talk a little bit about something that you touched on, and it makes sense for people who want to have a long-lasting hot pepper plant. You mentioned growing peppers in containers, and you mentioned the fact that in tropical areas, they become trees. They live through the winter. This is a good idea if people want to keep that hot pepper plant going, is grow it in a container and then move it to a warm spot if they live in a cold winter area, and then bring it back out again come spring.
Yes, you can do that, and most people say, well, there's not enough light. Well, you're not going to get fruits all year long. I have a greenhouse, and I have tropical plants like hibiscus and so forth that I put on my patio during the summer, bring them in, and they all have to be pruned back, and chili plants are no exception to that. But, you know, if you take a chili plant that's in a container and put it outside during the summer and bring it back inside during the winter, it doesn't have to have all that much light. Put it in a southern exposed window and so forth like that. All you're trying to do is keep the plant alive. You're not trying to grow fruits, because that'll come in the summer. Now, I'm sure there's some exceptions to the rule if you know, people have a really good greenhouse operation. The difference between summer light intensity and winter light intensity is incredible. You hardly even notice it for a plant. I'm telling you that it's just a complete difference. The way the sun is in the sky, you don't get the full intensity of the light like you do in the summertime. So,
with the hot pepper plants that you've grown, that you've overwintered, in year number 2, do you get hot peppers quicker?
No. As a matter of fact, your yield would be less usually. There's a certain, even though these plants are perennials, they've been bred for so long to be annuals that the problem is vigor and a lack of vigor as the plant gets older. It seems like the larger the pod, the less vigor the plants have. The smaller potted plants, like if you're growing pekins or chiltepines or something like that, they seem to have more vigor as they grow older. But the larger potted plants don't, like the New Mexico chilies and so forth like that, lose vigor a lot.
Okay, that's a good tip. That if you want to overwinter your chili pepper plants, the smaller potted versions have a better chance for success in year 2 than the larger potted varieties.
Exactly.
We've been talking with Dave DeWitt, author of several great pepper books like The Pepper Garden, The Hot Sauce Bible, The Chili Pepper Encyclopedia, The Spicy Food Lover's Bible, The Complete Chili Pepper Book. Dave, thanks for a few minutes of your time today.
Okay, Fred, good talking to you as usual.
I've told you about Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planters. They're sold worldwide. Smart Pots are proudly made 100% right here in the USA. They're BPA-free and lead-free, making them safe for growing vegetables and other edibles. Well, the folks at Smart Pots have added a new product to their lineup, perfect for building the healthiest soil imaginable for your garden by composting. It's the Smart Pot Compost Sack, a large 100-gallon fabric bag that's lightweight yet extremely durable and lasts for years. It can hold 12 cubic feet of pure compost. This rugged fabric is entirely porous, containing many micropores that allow for air circulation and drainage. It's easy to start a compost pile with the Smart Pot Compost Sack. Just open the sack, set it on level ground, and start adding your compostable materials, grass clippings, vegetable peelings, coffee grounds, and more, as well as fallen leaves, straw, and shredded paper. Next, place the optional cover over the sack. That's all there is to it. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers and select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. You can find the location nearest you at their website, and you can buy it online from Smart Pots. Just visit smartpots.com/Fred. And don't forget that /Fred part, because on that page are details about how, for a limited time, you can get 10% off your Smart Pot order by using the coupon code FRED, F-R-E-D. Do it at checkout from the Smart Pot store. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pots' lightweight, colorful, award-winning fabric containers and their new compost sack. And don't forget that special Farmer Fred 10% discount. It's Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. I realize you're probably listening to this while wearing long pants, a long sleeve shirt, maybe a jacket, maybe earmuffs, but we're going to talk about roses for the heat. Because if you recall last summer, many people in the United States had record-breaking temperatures. And in many instances, it was the rose bushes that were most noticeably hit. So for planting your next year's garden, let's talk about the roses that can take the heat. We're here at Harvest Day. It's put on by the Sacramento County Master Gardeners here at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center. Big public event showcasing the beautiful gardens here at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center. There are practical gardens that can be applied to your own yard. If you ever get a chance to come to Harvest Day or one of the monthly workshops here at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center, you ought to do so because you're going to get a lot of good tips for your garden. We're talking roses with Debbie Arrington, Master Rosarian. She's answering rose and apparently tomato questions here today at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center during Harvest Day. And fortunately for us, it's still early morning when we're doing this recording, and it's not going to be, fortunately, as hot as it has been. But don't tell that to the roses on the south side of the house, because they just seem to be suffering. Everybody in the United States is having unprecedented heat waves. So the question is, Debbie Arrington, which roses are best compatible with high heat situations?
The roses that do best in high heat tend to be lighter colored roses. The darker roses, your red roses, they absorb all those sun rays and it just fries them to a crisp. And so you've probably seen your red roses not looking very well this summer. Olympiad, Chrysler Imperial, Mr. Lincoln, all your classic reds, it's like they absorb all that extra heat and they just get fried. So it's the lighter colored roses that tend to do better, such as your yellows and pinks. Now, a lot of yellows tend to fade in sun anyway. But my yellows that I like best, in high heat, and they're doing really fine this summer, are Julia Child and Shockwave. Those are two Floribunda, roses. Julia Child is a beautiful butter yellow, and it tends not to fade. And because of the lighter color, it doesn't absorb as much heat, and it seems to be holding up to this hot summer just fine. And Shockwave is a brilliant bright yellow that doesn't fade either. And both Julia and Shockwave have beautiful bright green foliage that's disease resistant and stays nice all summer long. So those are two Floribundas I highly recommend for summer heat. Another Floribunda that looks fantastic in heat or cold and looks great this summer. It's the best looking rose in my garden right now is a Floribunda named Daybreaker. And Daybreaker gets its name because it looks like a early dawn with different shades of orange and yellow, and no two rose and pink, and no two blooms are the same. They're all very individual, and it also has very clean, bright green foliage, and it's quite heat resistant. Of the larger roses in my garden, well, the larger hybrid teas, because the roses are bigger, they are suffering in this heat the most. Some of them seem to cope with the heat better than others, and the one that's doing best in my garden right now is an old timer. It's called First Prize, and it's a bright neon pink. It's a very, very bright pink, hot pink, but they're very big roses, and they have a very nice form to them, and that one seems to be doing better than others. Also doing well are the landscape roses, the shrub roses, such as the Drift series. And those are roses that are grown to stay close to the ground and be easy care. They're self-cleaning, which means that the blooms, once they're spent, just drop off, so you don't have to deadhead them. And because they stay smaller and compact, they aren't suffering in the heat as much as some others. Another good landscape rose is one called Home Run, and it's part of the Knockout series. So, knockout, home run, it, makes sense. And it is a single hot pink, rose. It has about 5 to 6 petals, with real pronounced gold stamens in the middle. It's blooming its little head off. It doesn't seem to mind the heat at all. And another good one is the one that is the favorite parking lot rose of California, Iceberg. And Iceberg is a old Floribunda that's been around forever, but the white blooms, are resistant to heat, and they're also resistant to pollution, which is why it's used so often in parking lots and along roadways and things like that. But it's a very hardy rose, and the white stays pretty clean too. A lot of white roses just look really crispy in high heat, but Iceberg seems to still stay its nice pristine white no matter how hot it is.
One miniature that is doing well in my yard in a very high heat situation is Joy, and it's just doing fabulous. Can you think of any other miniatures that are good for high heat situations?
Joy is doing really well in my garden too. And Joy, for folks that aren't familiar with it, it's a kind of a creamy white with a purple pink edge. It's got a pickety edge on it. It's a real standout bloom. Other miniatures that are doing well, there's Adisto, always does well in my garden, and Adisto is actually, I think it's a mini flora because it wasn't released as a mini flora, but I think they changed it. It's a pink and purple blend, and it's kind of on the reddish side. Even though it's a darker color, it seems to be doing okay. It's coping with the heat well. And one it's a white and red blend, Baldo Villegas, named after our local rose expert, and that rose has found fans nationwide, and it's a beautiful white and pink blend.
Well, I know where I can get that, so that's not a problem.
Whirlaway. It's a mini flora. It's a little white rose, and it's just perfect. It's a beautiful mini flora. So a mini flora is between a miniature and a floribunda, size-wise. So the blooms are about 2 inches across when they're open. Another good white that's doing well in the heat is Innocence, which is an old-time white miniature. It's doing very well.
A lot of good roses for the heat. You have to know which ones. Debbie Arrington's been providing providing the names. She's a master rosarian, so I guess we will be leaning towards the lighter colored roses for those really hot situations.
Well, ideally, roses like to be facing east. That way they get the morning sun, but then some afternoon shade. And that helps them, particularly here in Sacramento and other places where there's a lot of high heat, as in Arizona and places all over the country right now. That way they get, enough sun to keep blooming, but when it's really, really hot, they get the shade they crave.
That's right. Some of the roses have been acting very weird this year in the heat, like smaller flowers, for example.
Well, we've had in California the driest year in recorded history, and that lack of groundwater has really had a cumulative effect on any shrubs. And roses are, they're shrubs. And so this year, my roses are much smaller than usual, particularly my hybrid teas. And a lot of them are also not producing as many petals per flower. Ones that should have 30, 40 petals per flower are instead having 10 or 12 and look like a semi-double instead of a full rose. And this is all a result of not enough water and too much heat.
Another thing that's happening to roses, and I get this question a lot, is why are there leaves coming out of the middle of the flower?
Oh, yes. That happens when plants are stressed. It's called fasciation, and it's a weird vegetative state that is caused by stress. And there is so much stress going on right now in plants' lives that we see this sort of weird growth coming out of the middle. In my garden, Perfect Moment is the one that does it the most. And Perfect Moment is a older orange blend hybrid tea. And it has these monster blooms that look like they're from the Little Shop of Horrors. It's very strange stuff. You will also see that if a plant is exposed to Roundup, but it is more severe, and it's not just the one bloom. You'll see it all over new growth on the plant. It will have very strange deformed growth.
Roundup, just one name for any sort of herbicide that has the active ingredient glyphosate, and that's a whole show in itself. Is glyphosate damage on roses? That's another very common question we get. It's something that may not even manifest itself until months later, and you may even forgot you were even spraying around the roses.
They're hypersensitive, and that can also be drift from somebody else's yard. Roses and glyphosate do not mix.
Debbie Arrington, Master Rosarian, the proprietor, along with Kathy Morrison, of the Sacramento Digs Gardening blog. Debbie Arrington, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll have a link to Sacramento Digs Gardening in today's show notes. The weather may not be perfect for outdoor gardening right now, but it's perfect for planning your 2023 garden. Now's the time to plan the what and the where of what you want to plant for the future. And to help you along, it pays to visit your favorite independently owned nursery on a regular basis throughout the fall and winter just to see what's new. And coming soon to that nursery near you is Dave Wilson Nursery's excellent lineup of farmers market favorites, great tasting, healthy fruit and nut varieties. They'll already be potted up and ready to be planted. And we're also talking about a great selection of antioxidant-rich fruits, such as blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, goji berries, grapes, kiwi, mulberries, gooseberries, figs, and pomegranates. Wholesale grower Dave Wilson Nursery has probably the best lineup of great tasting fruit and nut trees of any grower in the United States. Find out more at their website, davewilson.com. And while you're there, check out all the videos they have on how to plant and grow all their delicious varieties of fruit and nut trees. Plus, at davewilson.com, you can find the nursery nearest you that carries Dave Wilson's plants. Your harvest to better health begins at davewilson.com. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. A lot of ways you can leave us a question. You can call or text us at 916-292-8964. That's 916-292-8964. Go to our homepage, gardenbasics.net, and you can leave a question there. Email? Sure. Send it to Fred at farmerfred.com. But one of my favorite ways for you to leave a question is to call us on the computer to speakpipe.com. You can leave an audio question without making a phone call. Just yell at your laptop or your smartphone. Speakpipe.com, Garden Basics. Debbie Flower is here, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, to help us answer the questions and clean up any mess I make. Today, the question comes from a local resident, a local gardener, and it's about a bug.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear what June has to say.
Hi, Fred. My name is June. I live in Walnut Grove in the California Delta, right outside Sacramento. My question is about leaf-footed bugs. I've been growing tomatoes in this area for probably 7 years and never seen these before on my tomatoes, but this year they were absolutely overrun with leaf-footed bugs. My question has to do more with next year. I'm afraid they're going to be overwintering on my property somewhere, and I'm going to have the same problem next year. If you could give some advice on how to deal with leaf-footed bugs, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, June, for that question. And Debbie, a leaf-footed bug is just like the name says.
Yeah, it is. It's a true bug. And when you look at its legs, they have look like they have some extra tissue, like they have a little piece of leaf on their legs. They're kind of lazy eaters. They hang out with their babies, and they all hang out in one place on the plant and eat together. They lay eggs on plants, but also I've found the eggs on the wall of my house.
Whoa, what do the eggs look like?
They're sort of tan colored, and they're all lined up in a row.
Wow. That makes it easy to identify.
Right. They are pretty distinctive to identify. They're nymphs. They don't have what we call complete metamorphosis. They just go through growth stages. They come out of the egg as a young form, and then they go through nymphal stages where they grow bigger and shed their skin and grow bigger. And in the younger stages, they can look sometimes like a beneficial insect, but if you see them with their parents, you know they're not.
Yeah, the beneficial that they look like in their juvenile stage would be the assassin bug, and its very subtle differences between the two. I guess we should point out about its feet. It's only the rear legs that have that paddle-like foot.
Yes. And that extra tissue, yeah.
The good news is it doesn't help them swim.
No, not that I know of. You know, they might keep secrets.
The damage they do, though, it seems to be fairly superficial unless they're on your pomegranates, and then they can ruin that.
They can destroy the fruit on that, right. Yeah. And I don't have a pomegranate, so when they were in my garden, yes, I saw them around and in groups. And like I said, they're kind of lazy. They're pretty slow moving for the most part. So they were pretty easy to control manually.
And by controlling them manually, you're not bringing in somebody named manually to do that, although that would be nice if you're rich.
That's a good idea, yeah.
As long as he brought his own bucket with soapy water.
Exactly. And that's the easiest thing, is to hand pick them, because they don't fly away or jump up and run really fast. They're pretty easy for you to hand pick, although when they're frightened or stressed, can emit a kind of foul smelling chemical, so you might want to wear gloves, and then have a container of soapy water. Insects breathe through their skin, and so if you put them in soapy water, it clogs those breathing pores and they can't live anymore.
It's kind of a cute little bug. You'll see it in today's episode of what it looks like. The leaf-footed bug does overwinter, and like June says, it's a good idea to be aware that they just might be overwintering in your yard. Some of their favorite hiding places include wood piles, barns, palm fronds, citrus or juniper trees, or under peeling bark or in tree cracks.
Yeah, so all those little nooks and crannies that we kind of ignore. And June is right on the money in terms of worrying about next year. That's what she should be thinking about, especially this late in the season.
If you live in a cold climate, this is why you don't have them. You live in a cold climate.
Yes, the cold kills them.
Yes.
Right.
But in USDA Zone 9, and they are spreading throughout USDA Zone 9. Yeah, you want to look for them and either squish them or put them in that bucket of soapy water.
Right. Or prepare your garden for the beneficials. They're beneficial to us that would harm the leaf-footed bug. So they have natural enemies. Birds are a natural enemy of the leaf-footed bug, as are spiders. And then there are some of the very small insects, like the small wasps, that lay their eggs inside the eggs of the leaf-footed bugs. And when the wasp eggs
hatch inside the leaf-footed bug egg. They eat the leaf-footed bug embryo. It's not going to cause total control, but if you can invite the things that are going to control the leaf-footed bugs for you into your garden, then you will have natural control. So I had a big infestation just 1 year. And my property is surrounded by power lines on 3 sides, and birds sit up there. I can sit and watch them, and they will swoop down. They're not the high tension ones. They're probably like the internet ones, the ones that are not so high on the pole. And they swoop down and get something out of the garden. So if you don't have the power lines, like I do in my urban setting, you can just put a nice tall, maybe 1 inch by 1 inch post in your garden, and the birds will sit on it looking for something to eat. So that's one way to get the birds in there. Another is to have things that they feed on naturally, like zinnias and flowers that invite both the birds and other beneficial insects.
I'm still thinking about internet power lines.
They're not power lines, but they're, you know what I mean, above ground internet access. Some of the true bugs also go after the leaf-footed bug, and they need something to eat, so flowers attract them as well.
The good bugs hotels, yeah. You need them. And I've seen your neighbor's yard, and no offense to your neighbors, but they don't really do a lot of mowing of weeds.
Yeah, so right now it is kind of cut down, but my neighbor has a large piece of property, and she's a full-time working single person. Right, so lots of things do overwinter in that garden. And I can tell when the grass has been high for a really long time, because I will have a different pest population in my yard.
Yeah. The adults, when they start waking up in March or April, they're hungry. So they're going to go where there's food. And the first food source that has seeds is probably the weeds.
Right.
And off they go, and then they'll move into gardens, landscapes, in search of early season fruit and a place to lay the eggs. Mm-hmm. And again, those eggs look like what?
They are in a row. They were tan. Now, my house was tan, so I don't know if they change color. Are they able to do that?
Are they like an aphid?
They're kind of rectangular. And I think in most cases they are tan. I don't think they change color. And they're in a row. So it's just a single row. It's not...
It looks like a worm.
It does look like a worm.
Yeah. And
I saw it on the side of my house and messed with it. I let it stay to see what would happen. I'm curious that way. Then I saw what it was. And so I had that soapy water. And
did you get to see them being born?
No, I wasn't there at the moment.
That's always exciting.
Yeah.
The miracle of birth.
Yeah.
And then you stomp them.
Oh, and for spiders, if you want to invite spiders into your yard, a very coarse mulch works very well. And I mulch almost 100% of my yard is mulched with arborist chips. And that's great spider habitat.
So, June, getting back to some strategies for controlling next year's possible population of the leaf-footed bug, clear away any weedy areas in late winter that are adjacent to gardens or orchards, and check your pomegranates or if you have them. And this is something that should be a year-long avocation for any gardener, and that's cleanup. Just pick up fallen fruit, because those are wonderful winter hiding places for the bugs.
Right. Right. And if you do have a pomegranate, or if you do, again, have a large population, or you see the beginnings of a large population next spring, floating row covers will help. So that excludes the bug from the plant it's trying to get onto and feed on. So I don't know how big your pomegranate is, but if you choose to keep the leaf-footed bugs out of the pomegranate, you can put a floating row cover all the way around. You're going to have to tie it at the trunk end.
Another good habit to get into when you make a new planting, be it a cool season crop or a warm season crop, and you're planting from seed or very young transplants, is use a row cover. Protect those young plants from getting damaged by any sort of voracious pest that might be around.
Right. Insecticides should not be needed. You should be able to control them without the use of insecticides. So hand-picking, creating the environment that attracts the beneficials, floating row covers over the plants that they are particularly interested in.
You have a thumb and index finger, use it.
Or pay your children.
Pay your children a nickel a bug.
Woohoo!
Oh, they'll look up from their phone and just shake their head and go back to their phone. Raise it. Go to $1 a bug if you have to. But again, they stink. when you crush them.
Yes, when they're stressed or frightened, yes.
Another option, too, for control, if you do this early in the morning when they're not quite as active, is dedicate a handheld vacuum to the task.
I've never done that, but you do it, don't you?
I have done it in the past, yes.
And is the suction, this is one of those little ones, the little...
Yeah, it's a little handheld one, and as long as you're very good about cleaning out the bag that's inside, you'll be okay.
The bag doesn't get all clogged and gooky.
If you clean it every day, it's not a problem.
Okay.
If the last thing you do when you're done is empty the bag that's inside that little hand vac, you're okay.
Okay. And it's strong enough suction to get those puppies in there.
That haven't run away.
Yeah.
That's but you have to use it regularly. And just like you found the egg masses, you want to destroy those, and they're often on the underside of leaves too. So look for that long yellowish brownish worm on undersides of leaves.
Yeah, with rectangular segments.
It's the leaf-footed bug, a very popular bug among their own kind in USDA Zone 9. They love pomegranates, they love tomatoes, and a whole host of other crops as well. So get used to it. The good news, I think we should point this out, is that we have both had an infestation in past years. And then for some reason, a year comes and there are none. And
I have not had any since.
Yeah, and that, like you point out, the good guys, the birds, spiders, whatever, taking care of the problem. Or maybe we're just being more judicious about cleaning up our messes.
Well, that's true. Fall sanitation is high on my list of things to do.
All right, leaf-footed bug. You can control it. We'll have a link with more information, too, about controlling leaf-footed bugs in today's show notes. Debbie Flower, thanks for helping us out with the questions here.
Always a pleasure, Fred.
Fall and winter weather can be tough on your trees, especially when the wind, rain, and snow are at their peak. In bad weather, trees go boom. But it's possible to be a bit proactive and perhaps not have that tree branch or the entire tree fall onto your home, car, or garden. A thorough inspection of your trees now before the big storms hit might uncover some structural weaknesses in trees that you've never noticed before. What are the signs of a possible tree failure? We cover that in the latest Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter coming out November 11th. For current newsletter subscribers, look for Inspect Your Trees Now in the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. It's in your email. Or start a subscription. It's the free Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. Find a link in today's show notes or sign up at the link at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. The Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast comes out once a week on Fridays. Plus, the newsletter podcast that comes with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter continues, and that will also be released on Fridays. Both are free, and they're brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. The Garden Basics podcast is available wherever podcasts are handed out, and that includes our homepage, gardenbasics.net. And that's where you can also sign up for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast. That's gardenbasics.net, or you can use the links in today's show notes. And thank you so much for listening.